Good morning. Today is February 23rd, 2016. Thank you. This is the regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Johnson, Figueroa Villa, Kim, and Saltzman are present, and we have a quorum.
Thank you.
Number 1 on the agenda, consent agenda items.
Do we have any comments?
We have a comment card on 1A.
Can I get a motion
Move
to
approval of items 1B and 1C.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's bring the comment up on 1A, please.
We have Prentice Jenkins.
Prentice Jenkins, City Life newsletter, publisher, activist since 1991. It's about counterterrorism, and I have a show and tell on that.
Everything from crime suppression and counterterrorism. Insiders Facebook would tell us they are ready to respond when the public needs them the most. Tonight, they're blowing the whistle on what they call a false sense of security. We're on location with LAPD. Choppers, heavy equipment, and the department's elite Metro Division. The goal? Train for a major attack.
You play like you practice, and you're practicing today.
But that practice is scripted like a film. And according to these Metro officers,
It's frustrating. We're telling the public we're ready for a terrorist-style attack, but we haven't even finished training on how to walk through a door.
rewind to April 2015.
So apparently, LA is not ready for a terrorist attack. They're faking it. That's what these cops are saying, that they're faking all of this, these terrorist training programs, and it's all scripted by Hollywood. So if we're not ready for a terrorist attack, and of course you know we're going to get a terrorist attack, and I've continued to say it might not even be ISIS who does it. It may be some crazy cop who decides it's time to kill, like that guy yesterday, or some crazy fireman who's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and just goes and starts blowing people away. I've told you that's going to happen. You heard it right here. One day the active shooter will be a fireman suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or a cop suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. That's what I wrote this manuscript on, post-traumatic stress disorder from first responders.
Okay, we have no other comments on this item.
Approval, Deanna.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you. We're now on item number 2, commission comments.
Do any of my fellow commissioners have any comments this morning? Do we have any comment cards on this item?
Yeah, we do.
We have 1 card.
There's 2 more.
Okay, that would be 3 cards. The first speaker, Prentice Jenkins.
Relative to attendance, participation, meetings, I don't know if you had anything to do with it. Prentice Jenkins, City Life newsletter, publisher, activist since 1991. I don't know if you had anything to do with it, President Johnson, but they did check our bags before 9 o'clock, so we would be standing out there. So if you did have something to do that, I appreciate it. And we can get in here on time and make our comments. The brief reporting, I'd also like an attachment to the attachment to all these, to the agenda items that are in that book, because it takes us too long to read that book. And sure, there are people that don't have the internet. There are people that don't know how to use the internet. Believe it or not, there's still people that don't know how to use computers. And I ought to know. In 97, someone actually donated computers to us, and I didn't know how to use them. So we sat them in the office, and they were sitting there blank screen till someone came in and said, "You guys got computers?" We said, "Yeah." He said, "Why aren't they on?" He said, "No one knows how to use them." So there's still people who don't know how to use computers. So I urge you to attach those notes and those books to this agenda, because they are part of the agenda item. And it's easier to read them here, sitting there, than to stand up back there and read them. Also, the projects that the commission is working on, I hope one of the projects the commission is working on is continuing to get the chief to fire those two officers that killed Ezell Ford and murdered Ezell Ford. I hope that's one of your projects, because the name Ezell Ford is not going away. The name Riddell Jones is not going away. I'm going to keep speaking for the dead.
Hamid Khan, followed by Jamie Garcia.
Hi, it's Hamid Khan from
Good
Stop
morning.
LAPD Spying Coalition. I just want to take a minute to point to the response that we got from you, Matt Johnson, on the letter that Black Lives Matter, Los Angeles Community Action Network, and Stop LAPD Spying Coalition had sent. And it's very disheartening and disappointing that once again your response is completely inadequate and completely inappropriate. We've outlined 9 major areas of contention where the communities have been coming to this commission, raising these issues, and rather than looking at the substance of what we are raising, you completely just gave us a very superficial answer. But we are going to give you a detailed response. I mean, I'll give you one example of, speaking about that how these commission meetings are completely restrictive and exclude a lot of our communities because of the time they are held. You speak about, well, this is not in my power. Why isn't it in your power? Why can't you take the leadership to move that? We talk about disciplining issue. You point to state charter. We talk about your leadership and what the communities are saying. And now there was a big article on the 16th, just a couple days ago on the 21st in the LA Times, outlining that out of the 6 counties, over 2,000 cases of police violence and police murders, only 1 person was prosecuted. But it highlights and underscores exactly what we are saying of complete lack of transparency and complete secrecy. We talk about racial profiling in suspicious activity reporting program. You point to that the Inspector General has said there is no racial profiling. We're talking about the impact of these policies. We're talking about the impact of these policies. All right? Jim Crow was a policy. The impact was devastating. So this is what we are trying to get to you, that look at the substance, look at the depth of the matter, look at the issue, and look at how communities are being impacted. But we are going to get back to you with a very detailed response. And yes, we are going to just give you an opportunity to see where we can meet, as you have left it open at a mutually agreeable place, time, and location.
Great. Good morning.
Good morning. So Jamie Garcia with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. So I want to echo what has been said about how the response was inadequate, which makes me kind of question whether this commission, and especially you being the president, Matt Johnson, of your ability to understand the topic or the fact that you don't care about the concerns that we're raising. So, for example, in SARS, we know that suspicion in SARS is defined as observed behavior reasonably indicative of pre-operational planning of criminal or terrorist behavior. So I question, do you know that the National Academy of Sciences came out against behavioral surveillance, saying that there is not a way to identify terrorist activity, that it's impossible to find, it's impossible to see these behaviors as consecutively following up to a terrorist act. So we see reasonable indication also in the same guise of not being legally a definable term. So these are the kinds of responses that we want to get. We want to know that you understand the impacts of this. So when we look at this war on terror and the guise on terror, we know that it's based on the broken windows theory because there has been written reports about this. So the U.S. government sees that there are more domestic police than there are FBI agents. So when we look at broken windows, we know that it impacts the black community. So we know that what you want to do is police minor behaviors in this guise of finding terrorist behavior. So that's one thing. And then you deny the fact that SARS is impacting the black community. Though you may say that this program is not intended to do that, but we see that 30% of SARS collected were on the black community, 50% being on women of color. What about those lives? You cannot say that those lives are insignificant. And so when we see examples of SARS that have been released, we see that Brentwood students, 4 young women, now have FBI files because of this presumptive policing, because police officers assumed that they were up to something that they shouldn't have been doing when they were just taking pictures of buildings. We see that also the racial profiling that's going on in these SARS, where they talk about how people are dressed in Muslim costume. So again, we want this kind of analysis. We want this kind of response. The response you gave us is not adequate. In fact, it looks like you're pushing the agenda of the mayor, that you're not even speaking for yourself.
There are no other comments on this item. We're now on item number 3, report of the Chief of Police, Chief Paysinger.
Good morning, Chief Paysinger.
Good morning, Mr. President. Sitting in for the Chief of Police in his absence. First of all, before I report on crime, I would like to briefly offer the department's thanks to Dr. Fred Price, Reverend Fred Price Jr., Crenshaw Christian Center located at 79th in Vermont and Los Angeles, the ever-increasing faith ministry for hosting the first ever, I believe, first ever LAPD recruit graduation on the campus of the church. It not only allowed the LAPD to celebrate the graduation of 26 brand new LAPD officers, but also conduct an outreach for members of the community that have not had an opportunity to see a graduation before, and highlight the need to recruit people from all segments of the society and help make the LAPD a better representation of the community. A wonderful graduation, a great host, had a great time, very well attended. There was an excess of 500 people that were present at the graduation, and it's my best sense that the department achieved the objective of that outreach in the community during that graduation ceremony. As for the report on crime, year-to-date 2016 versus 2015, homicides have a slight uptick of 8.3%. Sexual assaults are actually down 27%. Robbery has seen an increase of 11.3%, and aggravated assaults have seen an increase of 13.6%, for a total violent crime increase year-to-date of 9.7%. Burglaries are down 20.5%. Motor vehicle thefts are up 18%. Burglaries and thefts from vehicle are up a marginal 3.3%, and thefts are up 11.2%, for a total property crime increase year-to-date of a decrease of negative 3.6%, for a total Part 1 crime decrease year-to-date of 1.1%. For the bureaus, Central Bureau is up 3.3%, South is up 1.4%, Valley is down 3.3%, and West Bureau is also down 4.5%. And Mr. President, that concludes the report of the Chief of Police.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing out the graduation ceremony last week. I was certainly remiss in not doing that myself. It really was a terrific event, and hopefully we can do more of those in the community. Do we have any comment cards on this item?
Yes, sir. We have 2 cards. We have Prentice Jenkins and the Red Chief Hunt.
Prentice Jenkins, published the City Life newsletter, activist since 1991. I've written a manuscript on pervert cops and pervert firemen. There are 1 million cops in this country. About 10% of them are batshit crazy. The rest are good cops. I'm not here saying all cops are bad. Here's a show and tell.
Set at $4 million each. Take a look at the video. Both officers were working out of the LAPD's Hollywood division when back in 2008 these allegations began surfacing against them, and now they are each facing multiple counts of forcible rape and rape by threat to arrest or deport, along with charges of oral copulation and sexual battery. In addition, Valenzuela faces a charge of assault with a firearm. Now the victims in this case are 4
women ages 19 to 34 who each say they were sexually assaulted when the two officers were working as partners. All four of the women were stopped or arrested by the officers, who often worked undercover in unmarked vehicles, but the women say they were also forced to perform sex acts in black and white patrol cars with the officers wearing their uniform.
Oh, with the officers wearing their uniform.
These women are facing. I can tell you though that it's speaking to. I can tell you though the damage. I cannot fathom.
She said they disgraced the oath of office.
Damage and
So when I make a claim, I can prove my claim. This is not about cops who are not doing this. This is about cops who are doing this. It's happening all over this country.
And please let the record reflect Commissioner Sobroff is now present. Our next speaker, the Red Chief Hunt.
Yes, the Red Chief Hunt. All right, we got another validation of police misconduct and 2 citizens arrest. This is why my shirt says, fuck the police. This is exactly why I'm wearing this, because you don't know who they really fucking. And I'm just make it point blank like that, whether it's male prostitutes or whether it's female prostitutes. It's not just happening in the Hollywood division, it's happening all around. It's not an aberration. It's a situation that's been going on in the LAPD for a long time. We focus on bullshit-ass crimes like birdseed arrests on YouTube. If you go and look at that video on YouTube and see them arresting me for feeding the birds, you will fucking just joke. And then this is another reason why I have on the T-shirt, to validate what I'm trying to say to everybody here. And this is going to be the sequel to Straight Outta Compton. And this is what, you know, what I really have to say about LAPD, you know, and I got to say it like this. Now listen to that. Have the authority to kill a minority. Now listen to that. We've seen that with Africa. We've seen that with a lot of young black people around here. Have the authority to kill a young minority. This is why I'm calling on the sequel from Straight Outta Compton to be Fuck the Police, because it's real. It's not an aberration, like Daryl Gates say. Our police department has went back to the same bullshit again. I think we need to bring in the federal consent decree to monitor the police, and it's well overdue. The Red Chief Hunt.
There are no other comment cards on this item. We're now on item number 4, regular agenda items. We do have 2 comment cards on 4A.
Do we have any comment cards on 4C or 4D?
No, sir.
Do any of my fellow commissioners have any questions on either of those items or would like to hear the report? And can I get
Move approval of items 4C and 4D.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's go to item 4A. I have a quick question on item 4A. We'll do the question and then...
Okay. 4A, Department's report dated February 19th, 2016, relative to the Restraining and Protective Order Audit, AD number 15-022.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I just had a quick question. The audit pointed out a couple of areas where we were falling short, and what is the plan for verifying that the corrective measures are actually effective?
Yeah, good morning, Commissioner. John Peters from the Office of Operations, and I'm joined with Terry Carter, who's in charge of our Records and Identification Division. So a couple things. First, I think looking at the first objective, where we fell short. If you look at that there specifically, there was 4 divisions that were identified as not having the control log that was supposed to be utilized in the process, and so a total of those of the 132, there was 38 total that contributed to. So we have made sure that they do have those control logs and they're utilizing those now. So you know that process is taking place.
Okay, great. And on the second part, on the evaluation of quality and integrity,
2B.
2B.
Yes. So I can. I'll ask Ms. Carter to provide some comments as well. In understanding the issues surrounding this, it's a little complicated. So the restraining orders generally, when they come to the department, they're handwritten, and sometimes they're difficult to read. And so the inputting that's done by the records clerks are sometimes
they're handwritten by the member of the community who's requesting the restraining order.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so sometimes as it goes to descriptors, as it goes to distances to be restrained, things like that, the information isn't completely legible, and so they'll make a best guess and they'll input it into the system so that it gets put into the system. There's a file control number that's generated, and the information is there. The problem is when there are some errors that they see or they have difficulties with, they fill out a letter that is sent to the court requesting that the information be clarified. And that's what we're seeing, even going back to 2009, the prior audits that were done, that we're not always getting a response from the court on those in terms of clarifying some of that information. So we're working to improve that relationship and to clarify that information so that we can get it in there accurately. Some of it is an attention to detail, type of thing. R&I division has developed I don't know what you would call it, a drop-down menu type of a resource to help for the inputting, because the inputting into the system is kind of an old system where you have to have a bunch of backslashes and dots and things. It's not as simple as you might imagine, but they have developed this drop-down menu that simplifies the process. That has not been pushed out to the areas, so we're in the process of doing that. And so we've identified some best practices that I think that will help with that piece, but certainly would turn it over to Ms. Terry if she has some comments regarding that.
Good morning. Terry Carter, Records and Identification Division. Commander is absolutely right. Following the 2013 audit from the DOJ, one of our employees developed an in-house script that runs in the front end. So we play the script and our employees can enter in the information. It reduces the number of errors that we have. And, you know, you press hit and it populates the restraining order system. And that really has helped out a lot. We're going to enlist the help of IT and hopefully push that out to the rest of the department.
When do you intend on that being pushed out department wide?
Well, we haven't just yet approached IT. I wasn't aware that the rest of the department didn't have this script. We are currently putting the script on thumb drives and then putting it into each computer, which is, you know, not that efficient within R&I division alone. So it would be very good practice if we let ITD actually create it professionally and then push it out to the department.
So when would you think it would be appropriate to do a spot check to make sure we're doing a better job in these two areas? Well, obviously the first one is covered now, but on this area.
You know, Commissioner, I think maybe you know, to make sure we have a decent sample size and everything, maybe look at 2 to 3 months, and I think by that time, you know, we can make sure that on our side we're at least getting that out and that we're using it. There's an association called ARMA, which is the Area Records Managers Association, and we meet with them, and so we've already met with them and discussed the findings of this most recent audit, and so they're on board. They're the ones that are in charge of these record units in the commands, and so we've got their buy-in and their support. But you know, to that point, part of it goes to a staffing issue. We're down 28 records clerks. You know, operations is so there's a lot of and the inputting of these. It's not quick. It's at least a 15-minute process, and they kind of got to stop everything, and so there's some of those things that we need to overcome as well in getting where we need to be on this.
Okay, so let's come back in 4 or 5 months after you've had a chance to. Is that enough time?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
It's
All right.
reasonable, yes.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
We do have 2 public comment cards. We have Prentice Jenkins and the Red Chief Hunt.
Thank you.
Prentice Jenkins, published the City Life newsletter, activist since 1991. In the audit, does it tell us how often restraining orders work? Man wants to kill his wife. I know it didn't work on that fireman who shot his deputy wife to death and had his 6-year-old son watch it. It didn't work on her. I'm sure she had a restraining order. That psycho fireman killed her, blew her head out, shot her through here, brains came out back there in front of her 6-year-old kid. Yeah. The question is, how many times do these things work? And you put together a restraining order.
That was actually not the subject of this audit.
I mean, in the audit, does it tell you how many times they work? That's what I'm asking. Are they tracking how many times in the audit restraining orders work and they don't work? See how I work that in? So, told you I'm clever. I'm not as dumb as I look. Really. Thank you. Yeah, so the question is, if you're doing audits on this, on restraining orders and protective orders, you need to find out how many times they actually work. Is it 70% of the time, 80% of the time, 90% of the time, 30% of the time, right? And then 70% of the time, women most of the time get killed because these things don't work. And women have to fight back because this restraining order didn't work. And when they fight back and kill that psycho fool, they end up in prison. A bunch of women in prison now, saving their lives. They're in prison. We don't know how many times these restraining orders work. If this is an audit, you need to find out actually how many times they work and how many times they don't.
All right, I want to talk about a little bit about the audits. The Red Chief Hunt, for the record. I think you got the best commander on the job, Commander John Peters. I had a good chance to work with him over at the Pacific Division. He's very much on the level, so I think that with the studies and him doing the statistics and things like that, you should come out all right on this one, Matt. Just keep the records to where they're not becoming just a number, that they're becoming accurate statistics and things like that. And I think that the citizens of Los Angeles will truly understand that, and not just coming back in the LA Times and saying that they're not valid. But keep your eye on that, and you guys got a good person working on that. Commander John Peters is a very good commander. The Red Chief Hunt, vote2016.com.
We have no other comment cards on this item.
Move to approve the item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
We're now on 4B.
I just have a quick question on 4B also. Thank you.
Department's report dated February 19th, 2016, relative to the timekeeping audit, AD number 15-008.
Would any of my fellow commissioners like a full report, or is it okay to go right to questions? Okay, great.
Morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Given what a large portion of our budget is spent on salaries, obviously we want to make sure, especially with respect to overtime, that we're tracking all of this properly. What's the plan in terms of following up on this audit?
Well, one of the things I want to point out is that in this audit, it was a different approach from the other audits we've done in the past. And here we looked at just the timekeepers and the process with just the timekeepers entering time. And I think that in this situation, the fact that we went ahead and advised each respective command of the findings, and they all responded indicating they would go ahead and share the findings with the timekeepers, bring these things up to their attention. And
Are the timekeepers the individual officers, or the timekeepers entering the pay sheet, the time sheets that the officers are doing into the system.
That is correct. It's personnel assigned strictly to enter this time.
Okay. So the DSIS is filled out by the officers, and then that goes to the timekeepers.
That is correct.
Who do the pay SR?
Correct.
Okay.
Actually, correct me if I'm wrong. PACER is done by FOD.
Yes. Laura Luna, Command Officer, Fiscal Operations Division. The timekeeper enters in the overtime for everybody in that command. The issue on this audit was the timekeepers in particular, their overtime, and not the overtime for the entire division, but just theirs to make sure that there's proper internal controls. And based on the audit, there aren't the strongest internal controls. So the controller, I spoke with them yesterday. They're going to put in a way to ensure that a person can't enter in their own time. And additionally, we sent out an email this morning letting all the timekeepers know that this is not a proper procedure. They're not to do that anymore, that the backup is supposed to take care of that for them. So we've dealt with that issue. To your question about overtime in general for the department, we have a number of audit reports that we send out to the timekeepers every pay period. So when there's, like for example, years ago we had an issue where employees were taking time off but not submitting the proper sheet so that those hours were deducted from their bank. Well, now we pick that up in an audit that we run the system every pay period, send that out to the timekeepers so we can see where that's not happening to ensure that that doesn't happen. So we have a lot of controls in place to pick up those kinds of issues.
Great.
I think certainly that communication with the controller will help out in actually instilling an actual way where the timekeepers can't put in their own time, or the OLAT's timekeepers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, do we have any comments on this?
No, sir.
Okay. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
So that brings us to public comment.
Public comment. We have 7 public comment cards. We have Prentice Jenkins, Zig Jiang, Bill Watkins, the Red Chief Hunt, Paula Miner, Hamid Khan, and Carolyn Stewart.
Prentice Jenkins, publisher City Life newsletter, activist since 1991. If anyone has any doubts about what I'm saying, take a look at this. This is Powder Springs, Georgia. This is a masculine gay cop. He's searching this young man. That's what he does with his hand. Right hand, hold it, pats it. 1, hold on, 2, 3, 4. The man's got to knock his hand away from his penis. He's holding on to it. That, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, is a sexual assault. He stopped with a sexual assault. That is a masculine gay cop. You stop that man to sexual assault. Now what they're doing is they got to cover up the sexual assault. So now they got to beat him. They got to beat him, almost kill him. That's to cover it up. What I'm talking about is not for any of the cops who are not doing this. I'm not talking about the good cops. The 90% of the good cops who don't do this. I'm talking about that psycho 10% who cannot control their sexual urges. I just showed you those two from Hollywood Division. They couldn't control their sexual urges to prostitute. That's sex work. None of you should be insulted in what I'm saying. You should be outraged and look for these types of cops. Because I suspect you know somebody. You heard them talk. You've heard them talk in the station. So you know how crazy they are. People knew how crazy Henry Solis was when he walked out of the bar and shot a man to death that he didn't know. LAPD officer Henry Solis. Everyone heard him. You see what they're doing? They're trying to kill him now. They got to cover up the crime. That's what they did in jail for.
Next speaker, Zig Jiang.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Zig. I'm the Vice President of the Chinese American Equalization Association. It is an honor to be here to express my words today. First of all, I'm here to bring my sincere appreciation to LAPD. On the last Saturday, February 20, 2016, the protests were across the country from East Coast to West Coast. And there were almost 1,000 Chinese Americans gathered together in front of LA City Hall to have a protest and march for supporting NYPD Officer Peter Lang, Justice for All. And that is the First Amendment to protect everyone has the freedom of speech. Thanks for those officers who were on duty that day for showing professional manner to direct our people to have a peaceful and safe march. With all the excellent assistance, the protest was very successful. Once again, I greatly appreciate for LAPD Chief Charlie Beck to lead a professional law enforcement team to protect our community, to make sure our community is safe. Also, I send out my gratitude to Officer Chow, who is from Community Relationship Division, and Sergeant Baker, who is from the Central Division. On the other hand, without the police officer out on the street, the community is under trial and danger. From the bottom of my heart, LAPD deserves a great respect from every one of us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Good morning.
Bill Watkins.
Morning. Nice to be back. Thanks. Nice to see everyone. Going to be busy. I'm running for mayor next year. I've just decided to go for it. I'm not a Garcetti hater at all. I respect him so much, his energy, and getting $1 billion I think he got from Congress, and he's done so many great things. I'm just going to throw my ideas out. Regarding police, I'm excited to say where his budget is 37% towards safety, I'm looking at 50% of mine. It's an extra $1 billion at least, I think. But it's got conditions, and those who have listened to me for a year and a half, 2 years, you'll know that I'll be interested in non-lethal policing, going into the forefront, graduating some classes of non-lethal officers, and a premium on foot patrols, actually enforcing law. Right now we have a reactive police force that listens to phone calls, and goes in often with loud helicopters. So you go from a crime to a crime plus noise pollution, which I don't appreciate. So the good news, please, speaking to the commission, for my campaign, my humble campaign that just started, I just decided to run on Friday. I was helping someone to run. I decided I wanted to go for it myself, is that I would really hope to bring 50% of the city budget to safety. That's police and fire. But there are conditions, and we got to stop killing people, killing our citizens. There's no excuse for it. Some of that may be my religious background, a Ten Commandment approach. You know, I just don't believe in killing. I believe in waiting situations out, being patient, being wise. Hard to ask of a 20-year-old. The first thing you do at police academy is give them a holster and start yelling at them. I love you guys. We got to change a little bit. I won't be taking any money, by the way, and I won't be spending any money. Don't offer, please. I'm not interested. I'm interested in ideas, and those will get me there. I do need 10 volunteers, though, so please get in touch. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
The Red Chief Hunt, followed by Paula Miner and Hamid Khan.
I just like to really understand all the commissioners' input on what just happened in Hollywood. We always talk about that policing is supposed to serve and protect, and community-based policing is about jobs and things like that. But yet, I haven't seen anybody really talk about it in that aspect. I've been down here for 10 years now. I was arrested or detained for wearing my Garf again after the city already paid me $215. I was arrested on YouTube for feeding the birds. I've been arrested for littering. I've been arrested 74 times. And if you don't think that has a great impact on an individual or citizens of Los Angeles, it does. But not only that, all these other people, Black Lives Matter, have a great impact. And what we're saying, we always have something to say, But when our policing is overwhelming with the policing misconduct and criminals in the police department, there's something really wrong with that. And yet, at this day in time, I really haven't seen anybody try to fix that in this police commission here. Now, we used to have the federal syndicate, and Bratton worked out the numbers. Chief Page Sr., you're the oldest chief here. This shit shouldn't be happening. I mean, damn Chief Beck, but you're the oldest, so I got to scold you. A lot of people don't think that I'll, reprimand you or because you black that it's going to be something done. But you got to get on top of this, no matter what. You are Los Angeles.
Paula Miner, followed by Hamid Khan, Carolyn Verstewart, and Ted Hayes.
Good morning.
Good morning. I stand with my colleagues from the Coalition to Stop LAPD Spying and LA Can. I represent Black Lives Matter. We, too, believe that the response that we received from Commissioner Johnson on behalf of this commission to our letter was inadequate and inappropriate. As stated previously, we will be providing a more substantive response to your response. We will continue to come to the Civilian Commission to speak out for those members of our community who have been killed by LAPD, especially those people who were unarmed or minimally threatening. We say that the souls of those individuals, including but not limited to Ezell Ford, Brother Africa, Riddell Jones, Norma Guzman, permeate through this room and will continue to haunt this commission because no one spoke out for those individuals in their death. I have my daughter here, Nia Miner, who's going to play something. This is the anniversary of the week that Malcolm X was killed, and that was almost 50 years ago. And some of the things that he talked about still exist, and we still feel are important and need to be changed.
The controlled press, the white press, inflames the white public against Negroes. The police are able to use it to paint the Negro community as a criminal element. The police are able to use the press to make the white public think that 90% or 99% of the Negroes in the Negro community are criminals. And once the white public is convinced that most of the Negro community is a criminal element, then this automatically paves the way for the police to move into the Negro community, exercising Gestapo tactics, stopping any black man who is on the sidewalk, whether he is guilty or whether he is innocent, whether he is well-dressed or whether he is poorly dressed, whether he is educated or whether he is dumb.
Thank you. They turned it off.
Hamid Khan.
Excuse me, sir. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to follow up where Paula and Nia just ended. I mean, I think that's, for me to listen to that is also an honor as well, because we ride on the shoulders of those before us who were speaking truth to power, who put their lives on the line. And that's what's happening today as well. You see this arena filled up by people who are putting their lives on the line, who are riding on the shoulders before us, who are celebrating people's power as well. Last year, 2015, 1,140 people were killed by cops in the United States. That's every 7 hours and 42 minutes somebody was killed. Every 7 hours and 42 minutes. LAPD led the nation with 20 or 21, depending whether it's Washington Post or Guardian or LA Times numbers, but it's still 45 cases of shooting. In 2016, February is not even over yet, and LAPD has already killed 4 people. We are again on track of right now 152 people have been killed already by cops. This is a wake-up call. That's exactly what Malcolm X was saying back then. This is exactly what the communities are saying now. It's not just a moment in time today that we are bringing this up. It's a continuation of that history. It's these conditions that are being created that people are being killed. That's the letter we sent to you, Matt Johnson. Those are the 9 key items that we highlighted where they need to be really, really unpacked and discussed in details. We have to file a lawsuit in December to get information on the SAR program. Finally, the city attorney is responding, but what we are getting is junk. LAPD is not releasing the documents. Why don't you want to know what's at the bottom of it? Why don't you want to know that the impact of these policies is directly racial profiling? Why don't you want to know that? We want to talk to you about the drones. You come back and you say that LAPD is going to be doing community outreach. We filed Public Records Act. Richard T. Fang responds saying there's been no community outreach. We bring down petition signatures, over 3,000 petitions. You completely discard them. And then you send us a letter responding. That's exactly why it's so inadequate and inappropriate. So
I look forward to sitting down with you and discussing these issues at length.
We will get back to you.
Carolyn Bush Stewart.
Good morning. My name is Carolyn Valjean Stewart. I worked off and on in the community most of my life. I've been going to church most of my life. I've been out here since I was 4 years old. I'm now 52 years old. I'll start with the recent and go on from there. They cleaned the streets on the 6th Street all the way down to close to Central. We got up early in the morning and started getting all the stuff moved so it would be out of the way. The officer was racial profiling, decided that they was going to take care of the fact because we was moving this stuff, and they did not want it moved. They wanted hazmat to take the stuff instead. So they turned around, and because 3 men had grocery baskets, and according to y'all, it's theft, of course, which evidently none of the baskets was taken from there. All 3 men was arrested and thrown in jail. It was like 7:10 or 7:15 when they decided to harass these young men and take them and handcuff them. Hazmat, of course, the police, y'all don't want your stuff out in y'all city, and I understand that, and with all respect to each and every one of you, and I thank God for your service, okay? But they turned around and deemed everything as dirty or filthy and nasty because of the fact that the police officers didn't want to move that stuff. So all that stuff was thrown away. We had a lady, Barbara Brown, who died next to the Ellis Hotel, which I'm in room 306 at the Ellis, where she died after laying in the streets for 3 days of hypothermia because her blankets were wet because of the rain. They're taking their tents and they're throwing them in trash. They're throwing their blankets in trash. I've been taking, I have somebody's borrowed blanket on my bed right now because I went to their house and I was cold. Because I give them my sheets and my blankets and my clothes and whatever I could give them. We need to do, as a city, needs to do better than what we're doing out here. They have 6 to 8 ambulances and more than that rolling per day out here. If the police officers want to do something to help us out, take some bottles of water, give them a cup, 2 or 3, on the hottest days out here, while they dying in the streets, while they going up having strokes and stuff, and help us out. My last comment, I know I got to go. Douglas Brown was arrested 2 months ago for blatant lies. The 2 people in my building, Mike, which his name's Michael, and a Hispanic woman named Valentina said he was going to blow up the building, which he did not say, which they said he threatened them, which he did not do. The fact is that the detective won't check into the situation because he said it's past preliminary. He's a veteran. He's an African-American. He has mental issues, and they've been verbally abusing him, which is on video in the building for 3 years. I've been there only for about 3 months.
Thank you for sharing with us this morning.
Somebody need to check into his case.
Thank you.
And the last speaker on this item, Chet Hayes. Yes, it is.
The federal consent decree.
The cards have to be submitted before the item is called. We'll check into it. Go ahead, Mr. Hayes. Go ahead, Mr. Hayes. And I'll check into it, but I'd like Mr. Hayes to get started.
The federal consent decree requires the officers to provide an identity card whenever they had a stop. I encountered 4 officers who provided me their card. Each card had a telephone number on it that was not operational. So whatever you wanted to do to follow up on what the engagement was between yourself and the officer, if you called that number, you got nowhere. Now, there was a captain here who took those cards from me, never gave them back. But those cards had the names of the officers I engaged in with on them. I want my cards back from that captain. But the consent decree also said that you have to follow federal law. As you no doubt know, the sheriff was not doing that. And what I believe you might look into is the fact that people who are in jail have a right to vote. They have a right to vote. Now, I don't know how many people will be in jail prior to the voting procedure, but since a mail-in ballot takes some time, there must be some means to provide voting for inmates in our jail on the day the vote takes place. If they are a registered voter, they should be allowed to vote. We're dealing with this right now with the Sheriff's Department because they are violating the Voting Rights Act on a scale that's almost unbelievable. Well, you can believe it. But anyway, so I would like to know, Mr. Tepak, well, whether or not the police department has a means for people who are registered voters to vote on the various election days. Manhattan Beach has an election day, and so does Santa Monica. So if there are inmates in our jails on the days that those elections take place, there should be adequate accommodation for their voting.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
Yvonne Michelle Autry, go ahead.
Yes, so I see you're practicing not just classic white supremacy, but sexism as well. Tut Hayes and I walked in together, but I did submit my request to speak before he did. And this officer here, I failed to get his name, said that it was too late. So that's on the record. You know, you people are some full of shit, motherfucking white supremacists, okay? And I used to think, you know, our people, you know, you are fully liable and responsible, not only for these murders, for ignoring and denying our complaints. Okay, we are law-abiding citizens, and we are tired of it. I paid my taxes. I was born in this country. I went to schools. There were private schools. I went to UCLA. We have every right for vindication, and you are fully liable, and you need to prosecute these white supremacist murders and they house niggas to the fullest extent of the law. We will not abide by this. This is neo-Nazi tactics. Prior to the Holocaust, they performed the same types of ritualistic murders against the Jewish people. And here you are, you Zionist Jews, synagogues of Satan, perpetrating the same Holocaust against black people. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Shamed. That's what. First of all, and I want to address Latino on black violence. You can't blame everything on the white man. I wish I could. I speak, read, and write Spanish. A lot of those officers killing black people are Latino. I'm tired of Latino people telling me, oh, don't you have any more children, okay? Or encouraging black lesbianism. No offense to the black lesbians, but black lesbians usually don't produce strong black males. Okay, and I'm tired of them encouraging us. Of course, you know, I give thanks for our organizations, but you have to understand how I'm not going to allow them to manipulate me further. But again, this has got to stop as well. The black and brown get down, but Latino people need to respect that Black Lives Matter as well, because your culture kind of caters to the white supremacy promoted by the Catholic Church. So.
Thank you for your comments.
We have no other comments on this item, sir. We're now on item number 6, closed session. We have 2 cards. We have Prentice Jenkins and Jamie Garcia. And Ted Hayes.
3 cards. 3 or 2.
Prentice Jenkins, publisher City Life newsletter, activist since 1991. I'd like to acknowledge Black Lives Matter, Stop LAPD Spying, and also L.A. Can, Pete and L.A. Can, Hamid Khan and Stop LAPD Spying, and Dr. Abdullah in Black Lives Matter. We discussed dismissal of officers, and I want to know how many of these officers who have killed over the past 2 years have been dismissed. We know that it took 8 years, and you still haven't dismissed those guys, to get these guys from Hollywood, to dismiss them from Hollywood. 8 years. So what that tells me that there was no investigation to dismiss these officers. They didn't even investigate it. It took them a few months to arrest these crazy cops raping women in the Hollywood division. But it took 8. They said it took 8 years. They had been raping women since 2008. They've been raping women since 2008, and they didn't arrest them till this year. That's outrageous. They didn't dismiss them. I mean, they put them on modified leave. That just means they don't get paid and they can continue to go out and rape and continue to rape women. The question is, we talk about dismissal of cops, but how many of these cops are actually dismissed? I mean, you have to dismiss rapist cops because, you know, you give anybody a badge, badges can go anywhere, and they can get in anybody's house. Huh? That's what a man with a badge can do. He can get into to anyone's house based on the fact that he shows them a badge.
Jamie Garcia.
So I'm just a little bit disappointed that Matt Johnson walked out and the chief of police isn't here, because this is kind of addressed to both of them. But so like people have mentioned before, LAPD has killed 4 people so far this year. The LA Times article highlighted the 2,000 people that were involved in police violence, 1 person prosecuted. So speaking to transparency, accountability, we need to look at rulings and disciplines of officers involved shooting. I see there is labeled an OIS 01915 that's going to be discussed today. So what I want to know is who this person is. They're not numbers, they're names, they're people that were in the community. Police officers did shoot these people. So we as the community have the right to know who these people are, and there is a precedence to that. So we shouldn't have to wait for the media to tell us. We should be told directly. And so I have a suggestion for you commissioners who are in power, who have the right to push policy, who have the right to make recommendation, is during the commission report, this should be told to the public. Who are you ruling on? Who is this person? Maybe even what the context is. The chief of police can say the same thing, because these lives matter. We need to know who they are. We need to know what these investigations are. You know, I know the quarterly discipline reports come out, but again, they're labeled as numbers. So then we have to go back to the agenda, figure out what their number is, try to match it up to the discipline report, and we shouldn't have to do that. These names should be honored. They should be known that this happens. Often you come back, you say this is a tragedy, we feel so sorry. So if you really feel this way, these persons should be named. We should know who's being ruled on. And again, we think that this should be an open public session where we get to see how this decision, how this analysis comes about. But again, that's something that you have the power to start suggesting. You have the power to say to the mayor. You have the power to start talking about the city charter to change this. So for today, I'd like to ask, who is this person? And I'd like the name spoken.
Next, please.
No, I have the right to be answered. I want to know who this person is and who they are that you're ruling on today. And I want to know on record that you're refusing to tell the public. Okay, so basically you're telling me you refuse to tell the public who you are ruling on today, that you do not care. You do not care to let us know. Speak that.
Your time's up.
Okay, so I'm taking your ability to not tell me as your refusal to tell the community whose life was involved in this officer's involved shooting. Okay, Soboroff. So you are confirming that you do not care. You are confirming that you do not care.
You want to be thrown out, but this is your last
Okay,
warning.
so now you threaten because you're afraid to be responsible to the community. You are threatening. You are threatening that you don't want to be responsible to the community. Go ahead and throw me out. Go ahead and bring your goons to come here because you refuse to answer to the community. Yes, that's how you operate. Bring your men with your guns to remove me. Go on, come on. Come on, folks, do your job. Do your job. Because this is what you're paid to do. This is what you're paid to do. Yeah, this is what you're paid to do. I work much harder.
Do we have any other speakers?
The next speaker is Ted Hayes.
Mr. Hayes. Why don't you go?
Mr. Hayes?
Mr. Hayes, are you going to speak or no? She's taking your time.
No, I'm not. You can't take his time away.
No, I know that. Thank you, ma'am.
You don't control the time for all the people.
Not going anywhere. You know, we're coming
Next.
back. We're going to keep on coming back at you, Sobral.
See you next week.
We're going to keep on coming back at you.
Mr. Hayes, you may begin.
I'm waiting for
We'll see you every week.
some order.
Okay, Mr. Hayes. Every day. We'll see you every day.
I'm not going to drown these people out.
Have some respect for human rights.
Figure out a response. How about that?
Some respect for human life, man. Just some respect. These are human beings. These are living.
Would you escort this guy out of the room, please?
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Mr. Hayes, just a moment.
Sir, would you escort this gentleman out also? Okay.
Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly assassinated the president, and Jack Ruby assassinated the assassinator. I'm assuming that with this number of officers, this is after Dahmer, Jeffrey Dahmer. And he was assassinated because he was supposed to be killed on sight. That's called being an outlaw. Bring him in, dead or alive. So even without being seen, these number of officers attempted to assassinate him. They simply began firing on whomever was in that truck. So what we had is people who were assassinating an assassinator. And I don't believe that's quite the way it should be done. I think due process rights are what every accused person, even when they have the smoking gun in their hand, has a right to. So somehow we must find out whether or not we have a procedure for assassinating people and bushwhacking and ambushing people. It was an ambush. That's all it was. It was bushwhacking. That's all it was. And that's what the LAPD was involved in with Dahmer. Sure, he upset a lot of people, but first of all, should not the persons he was allegedly after to assassinate be given protective custody, taken someplace other than their residence to hide from an assassin? We do that in many cases. So why not have done this here? Except they were dispatching these officers here, there, and everywhere, and as you can see, by great numbers, to protect someone at home. Those are two things I think that some policy should be developed from the Commission on Assassination on Protective Custody.
Thank you, sir.
We have no other comment cards. We're now in closed session. Item number 6, the Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss items number 6A1 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
You ready to go, Marianne, whenever you're available? We're back in session, folks.
The Board of Police Commissioners is now back in open session. In closed session, item number 6A1 was discussed, and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. Mr. Vice President, is there a motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Excellent. Cut, print, we're moving on. Hi, I'm Shane Woodson on the set of Cain and Abel here in Hollywood. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35. Our city, our channel. Okay, I need my actors back on set, back in position.
Hello, welcome to Connie Martin's